Finish what you start. Finish what you start. Every endeavor, every undertaking that we or any person takes involves a start and a finish. Finish what you start.
Welcome back to the neighborhood family. I am your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Happy Hood, the podcast. This is where we connect, cultivate, and build a meaningful community that is centered around health, agape, power, institute, Happy Hood. It is a purpose-driven lifestyle brand. What's going on, family? What's going on, neighbor? I'm so glad you decided to join us again for another edition of Happy Hood, the podcast. Finish what you start. This is where we talk to one more time, very insightful individuals. We kind of learn about their how-tos and their experiences that has helped them, that has shaped them, that has molded them to live a purpose lifestyle. And today's guest truly has done this day in and day out. Dear friend of ours, dear friend of the neighborhood, dear friend of mine. This individual was the first woman to receive a computer science Ph.D. from North Carolina A&T, go Aggies. She is associate professor of information science and system in the School of Library and Informational Science at North Carolina Central University. Shout out to the Eagles. She is a strong advocate for increasing number of women and minorities in computer science. She believes that the STEM workforce has both gender disparities and historical disfranchised of groups. As a member of AAAS IF and then ambassador, she affects change by examining girls' perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors and helping them gain confidence, curating, and developing a STEM identity. Happy family, let's give a warm welcome to the neighborhood, my dear friend, Dr. Siobahn Grady. How you doing?
Hey there, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me in the neighborhood, or the happy hood, I should say.
Well, hey, yes. Like I say, we go back. One thing I didn't mention, family, she is also a graduate of Winston-Salem State University. So let's make sure we get all that in, as she has kind of went down the HBCU train, here in North Carolina, of going to Winston-Salem, then going to A&T, and then also working now for North Carolina Central. So welcome again to the neighborhood. So I guess let's start with this. Talk to us a little bit about what you do for a living.
Right. So I am at. And by the way, I graduated from North Carolina Central University as well. That
Oh,
was
you
that was my second stop from Winston Salem State.
ah
And then I went to A&T, but I'm back now at North Carolina Central, actually in the same department that I graduated from. So it's truly a full circle moment for me, being in the department that I once attended as a student.
yeah.
There, I am an assistant professor of information science and systems, and I'm also the program director over the program as well for information science. So, what I do at NCCU is I do three things that I'm evaluated on:
Hmm.
research, teaching, and service. And that looks like a multitude of things. Let's start with the service. That
Yeah,
starts with
yeah,
me being on many committees, providing input, or actually working with others in different departments to get various projects done at the university.
hmm
Then for teaching, that's self explanatory. But outside of teaching, it also probably includes some professional development. So I'm always taking courses to learn how to do a better job of teaching,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
things have changed. We know that now in the pandemic, especially you have small children, K through 12. A lot of
hmm
schools went to either Google Classroom or Canvas. So
yeah.
that might be learning a new learning management system as well with my teaching. And then for my research, that includes me doing scholarly publications, applying for grant funding, and also bringing students into my research as well.
Yeah.
So I do all of those things. And outside of that, there's meetings because I mentioned to you all that I'm a program director. So
hmm
I actually serve a leadership capacity within my department. So I actually am a part of many other meetings as well. And I have meetings with my research collaborators as well.
Yeah.
So my days are pretty jam-packed, but I enjoy and I love everything that I do.
Yeah, it definitely seems. I mean, again, happy family. I've been knowing Dr. Siobahn for a while, So again, seeing her blossom into this is definitely very, very rewarding. And I would say I'm grateful, to kind of see you blossom into this. So I guess when you think about like what you're doing now, working in computer science, you're
Mhm.
doing research as you mentioned. Like, where did this all started? We think about far as your upbringing. When was you introduced, I guess you could say, to like science? And I go, of course, it may have been in elementary, but when did you kind of figure like, I really enjoy this. I really like this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will go ahead and say that I've always been a nerd
Mhm.
from day one, and I make no apologies about that. That's who I
Okay.
am, and I love being a nerd. I don't have my
Mhm.
glasses on right now, but I do wear glasses too. But no, it started at a very young age, and outside of you know, nerd, it started off with being competitive. So also
Okay.
growing up, I was a tomboy. So I
Mhm.
always, and this is relevant because the work that I do in STEM and computer science, these are male dominated fields. So I bring that into play because as a child, I was always very competitive. I like to play sports. I love to play video games. And I took joy in beating all of my male cousins because we were all the same age. I enjoyed beating all the boys in kickball in elementary school and
Uh-huh.
doing all the things. I love fishing. I love doing everything. I didn't
Mhm.
even know that, girls weren't supposed to do those things.
Yeah.
So it started there with my love to compete and a passion for technology because it started off with the video games. I
Mm.
was the Super Mario queen. I didn't like Duck Hunt. That was one of my boy cousins. They loved Duck Hunt. I didn't love that, but they couldn't beat me
Uh-huh.
with Mario. And so
Really.
it started there. And then to fast forward to around middle school, I believe that's the time the internet came about. And I
Mhm.
am dating myself, but John, you're older than me, so I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
But if you remember, John, there was something called dial up.
Oh, yeah.
And with dial up, it was wonderful. But the bad thing about it was when somebody called, the internet would get cut off.
Yeah.
And so I would spend as much time as I could on the internet when that came around. But whenever someone called the house, my connection was
It's
done.
gone.
And I would have to dial up and start again. So it went from video games from the console to the computer. And then when the internet came around, that's when I got into developing websites, which was a lot of fun and of interest to me. And outside of doing that in middle school, I also participated in something called MSEN, the Math and Science Educational Network. So, what that allowed me to do was take math and science courses at the local college on
Mm,
Saturdays or like a Saturday academy.
that's good.
And so that was fun because that gave me an opportunity to really engage in the math and sciences, but also I was there with other like minded individuals,
Yeah.
other people who are interested in science and math. And I didn't even know how pivotal that would be until later on. But who you surround yourself with, like how we are right now in the happy
Mhm.
neighbor, happyhood, it's important to your growth. You need to
Yeah.
be around
Totally.
like-minded people. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm trying to fast forward it up because we'll be
No,
here all
you
day
good.
if
You
I
good.
keep
You
talking
good.
about my childhood. But then let's go to high school. Uh,
Mhm.
Applying for college. When I applied to Winston-Salem State, I actually got an opportunity to be in a program they call the Minority Science and Outreach Program.
Mm.
And that was also a science program. So, what I was able to do before I even started my fall semester that summer, I took all the classes one would take, probably their first semester of college. I took it ahead of time. So, I basically already, um, was considered maybe a sophomore
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my real first semester
Mhm.
at Winston-Salem State. And so, what I'm trying to get to is that every single opportunity and everything that I did from childhood up until now has truly led me to be where I am.
Yeah.
It was all of those different programs that I did, such as MSOP and MSEN, and all of those other things that led me here. And so that's kind of an insight into my childhood. So I wasn't breaking things, but I definitely took joy in being inquisitive. I
Yeah.
always asked a lot of questions, and I still do. which is probably why the researcher in me is so prominent. I want to get to the details. And more importantly than that, I love to solve problems. I like to fix things. So
problem solver. Listen to that. I mean, that's what we need. We at times, and I guess when I'm kind of grouping a lot of people into this, so just bear with me, family. But one thing I have learned in my current at my current employment is this thought process around continuous improvement, right? And this continuous improvement is really seeing a problem and going after it, right? And really understanding like what is the why behind that problem? Where does it happen? What's the impact of it? And it's so much. And again, as an entrepreneur, you are a problem solver, right? You are truly a problem solver. So as you have, developed these skills and really, as you put it, have participated in these different organizations and programs to continue to help cultivate, your passion. Was it like when you went to Winston, did you know you wanted to go into computer science? Or
I did.
You did? Okay. So that's
I
something
did.
you
I
did.
do right off the bat. But there was some deliberation prior to coming to Winston-Salem State where I did, and I didn't even know this, I probably did a SWOT analysis, not even knowing prior to coming to college to kind of weed out other careers that I wanted to do. Ultimately, computer science was what I chose because I love computers. I don't think that'll ever change. And what I love about them and technology in particular is that it's ever changing and evolving.
Yeah.
And because I'm such an inquisitive person and I love challenges, it always gives me room to grow and to learn. And that's what I appreciate so much about technology. Because if you think back, even when I mentioned dial-up, what would the children do now without Wi-Fi? They might pass out.
Oh, shit, they'll fall out, arm at the mouth, they would do so much, so much. Now, quick question, and I'm gonna try to break this down because when I was attending Winston-Salem State, computer science was still somewhat of a new type of career, or in this case, major to kind of go into. Maybe it was definitely beyond its infant stage. But when you think about computer science, like for those that's not that familiar with the field, like how would you define computer science or the field of computer science?
Listen, everything that you do touches technology.
Yeah.
So, and I think the reason why it felt so new, John, is because I don't think people knew what technology would do.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that again, and I'm just using a dial-up reference because that's our example here, but that from middle school to college, I don't even think that's a decade time span. And that's how much technology changed from us having Wi-Fi, or at that time, matter of fact, we didn't even have Wi-Fi on campus. We actually had the LAN connection, right? So we no longer had to do dial-up, but we had and if you don't know what a LAN is, don't worry about it. But we basically had to plug our computer. And by this time, people didn't have laptops on campus, okay?
Nah.
Some people who had them, that was a luxury. So if you had one, most people might have had a desktop. You would just plug in that cord from your PC to the wall. And that's how you got connected. And now we have Wi-Fi. But I say all that to say that there are some fields that were more well-known than other fields. And I think computer science, if you hadn't already been introduced to that, and by the way, in my household, my father was a programmer and my mother worked at IBM. So I always knew about technology. But if you were in a different home, or you had, again, this goes back to what I'm talking about, your circles, who you're around, you may not know about that. Like, for instance, I have family members who all they knew was nursing because their mother was a nurse or worked in the medical field. So they chose nursing because that's all that they knew. And I think part of what young people need to see, or to find out earlier than probably we did, is what pathway they want to choose. And what better way to do that than the process of elimination? Try your hand at everything and find out what you love. I just happen to be blessed to actually be born and to find my purpose just at a very young age. But for others, it's not so simple. So
Yeah,
I would talk to younger people, and I do talk to younger people. I tell them, try it all, figure it out, because even in finding out what you don't like, that's still a gift.
Yes, yes. That's and it's funny. It's funny you say that. One, my dad worked at IBM too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember we talking about the dial-up. I just had to mention it. I mean, when you had said it, had kind of jogged my memory. Like we had a computer, and this is in the late 80s, early 90s. We had a computer. And we didn't, I mean, and the thing about it, I say it now, as I think about it now, excuse me, hindsight, like, wow, man, we were so blessed, to have a computer, because we actually had, and I don't know if this was like the first type of dial-up, but we had this thing called Prodigy.
Yeah, I remember Prodigy.
Yeah, okay, so
that
Prodigy,
was still dial-up. It was akin to like AOL, but it was a different service provider.
Yes, yes. So we had that, and I remember like going on there, and it was like baseball, fantasy baseball, something like that. That we kind of go in there and try to figure out. But again, just showing you how the evolution of this thing. Because if I fast forward to Winston, as you mentioned, like computer science, maybe not that was not that people didn't know a lot about it, or it wasn't well known. Because when I was in school, it was just when the dot-com bust happened. You know what I'm saying? So it was pretty much like, oh boy, maybe this thing is not it, right?
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, about figuring out what you want to do. And again, we're talking about finish what you start, really understanding how to, really understanding how do you continue to stay on course? How do you continue to go after the things that I believe God has calling you to do? And I had just had a conversation with my nephew. And I think one of the first things, especially speaking to young people, and I love what he said, Uncle John, I don't know what I want to do. And I was like, bruh, I think that's the first thing we need to admit, because I think about what my youngs are at that time when I was in my early 20s and everything. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, right? And as you mentioned, hey, I did somewhat of a SWOT analysis, which I didn't even know that at the time
I didn't know I was doing that.
You were doing that, right? Kind of understand the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. But what would you say to a young person, right, that's trying to figure out, what do I want to do, right? And as you mentioned, hey, trying things is definitely there. But maybe what are maybe one or two things that you would tell them that, hey, here's something else you want to do as you try things? What certain things you want that you would tell them that, hey, they need to maybe recognize, or what they need to do in addition to trying new things?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you're trying new things, keep in mind nothing is perfect.
Yeah.
So you really do need to take the time to truly write out the pros and the cons of what it is you're trying. Sometimes what we think we want is not what we need. And that is
amen. Now that's an amen go right there.
And that's a life lesson.
Yeah.
And ask questions. Be inquisitive.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, especially in our community, are afraid to ask questions, but questions are how you get answers. If you don't ask, how will anyone know? No one can read minds. So I would tell them to write down the pros and the cons, ask questions. There is no dumb question. The question that may be dumb is the one that you didn't ask.
Come on now.
Make sure to ask the questions. And it's okay to ask a clarifying question, right? We do that all the time. And I'm sure you do it all the time too, as well, John, in our fields, because sometimes people think they're being transparent, but they're not. It's not clear what they're meaning to say. And I would tell them to shadow people, ask them to, follow what they do within a day. And guess what? Right now is the perfect time to do that. We're virtual.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the perfect time, because everyone more than likely has access, especially if they're in the business world. Maybe if they're in the medical field, it might look different. Depends. Some things are field specific, but if you want to be a person in tech, definitely reach out to anyone in tech. You can shadow them, and they can probably give you a link to log in and give you a bird's eye view of what it is they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, totally.
And the last thing I was going to say, that's important too. And we don't talk about this enough, but mentorship.
Yeah.
You know, there are some adults, and I'm an adult, I have many mentors, to the point where I call them my board of directors. But I think young people need to seek mentorship sooner. Don't look at your professors as only someone teaching you the class. That might be the person who's going to write your letter of recommendation for a scholarship or for your job, or can speak to your aptitude for a graduate program, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes your professors might even serve as a mentor, but it doesn't have to just be your teachers. Sometimes it's your parents, sometimes someone in your church, whomever. But I would just tell them to, just ask questions. And it's the process of elimination. Write down the things you like, write down what you don't like. And then remember, one day doesn't necessarily give you the sum of it all. Sometimes you have to stick with things to kind of really see if it's going to be a good fit for you.
You got to go through the seasons.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah, you got to go through the seasons and understand like how that whatever situation or whatever the endeavor that you're going after, you got to understand, like to your point, go through the process, ask the question of mentorship. Because I think one thing that I had to realize this, and shout out to my man B for really articulating this and really kind of provided the epiphany for me, is that your mentorship doesn't have to be local. You know, your mentorship can be, hey, read their book.
Yeah.
Like listen to their podcast, listen to their YouTube channel, and really it helps you, one, by doing that, helps you gain insight into their thinking, right? Their thinking, of course, we may not be able to have dinner with Jay-Z or with the Warren Buffetts of the world, but we can definitely go read their book, listen to their podcast, and really get an understanding of their thinking. And speaking of understanding of their thinking and navigating, your career, your interest, your passion, as you mentioned, or within your bio, you were the first woman to graduate with a Ph.D. in computer science at A&T. So talk to us about that experience. As you mentioned, hey, you have somewhat of a motivation, a drive to compete and to knock down walls, right? To knock down walls and really like finish what you start. We may have to put you on a video, definitely of finish what you start, to really kind of hold on to that motto. Like, what was that experience like? What certain things that you learned about yourself during that time?
Oh goodness. Wow. That's a loaded question. I will start by saying, my parents have always told me, and this probably is a testament to why I am the way I am, but they've always kind of told me, you need to stick with something, because if not, you're going to repeat it again. And so that's always stuck with me. And so when the going gets tough, I've always kind of kept that in my mind and my spirit, because we all want to give up at the first sight of trouble.
Yeah.
Let me just say that.
Yeah, let's be honest. Come on.
We all want to give up and throw the towel in and start running and say, I'm not doing this. It's not worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
But should I have done that during that time at A&T, we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
Not to say I wasn't a great person before. I definitely was.
Yeah.
But that might be something looming over my head for the rest of my life. What if I had to finish? What if I hadn't gave up? Why did I let XYZ stop me?
Yeah.
But in regards to the journey, it's life altering, because, if I'm 100% honest, I like challenges, but sometimes even the challenges that I set out to do, I'm not really even sure if I can do it. I'm being honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was one of those challenges, because if you had asked me in undergrad, could I see myself getting a doctorate? No.
Really?
But what happened is I started proving things to myself, and I got more curious about my own potential.
Wow.
And that was the catalyst to get me to this point. And so, yeah, the journey is very challenging.
Mhm.
Everyone doesn't have a doctorate. Some people don't want it. I get it. But even some people who set out to get it, they don't make it to the finish line for various reasons.
Mhm.
What I learned about myself is so many things, but I'll
Yeah.
just say one thing. And
Mhm.
what I learned about myself is, yeah, I'm like Shakari said, I'm that girl. That's the nicest way that I can say that,
Mhm.
because there were obstacles and there were trials and tribulations. And had it not been for the Lord who was on my side, I wouldn't have made it through those
Amen, sister.
challenges.
Yeah.
But I learned just how resilient I am. And
Mm.
that's the word, resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. Resiliency is
Mhm.
it's amazing. I'm gonna try my best to articulate this thought. I'm still formulating it, but family, what I'm saying is that sometimes you don't know who you are and the skills you have in you until you actually go through the fire.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Until you actually go through things that really going to develop you. And when you think about it, you are definitely, once you're able to, and I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on this, like you kind of use, I don't want to say use, but as human, we kind of either go to a fight or flight type
With
of a moment, right? Or of a reaction, right? And I think at times the moments where I was able to fight was the moments when I was really in a very submissive posture. And what I mean by that is where I stopped trying to wrestle with the discomfort and really began being comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
And that allowed me to really go into a phase of understanding that I'm in a growth season, you
Mhm.
know. And I had to come to that, a moments during my time of going after endeavors, and even times now where I still have to kind of remind myself that I'm in a growth season. And I know you mentioned this during that time where you had to kind of you you discovered this line of the, hey, I am very resilient, you know.
Mhm.
And I wonder, like, in those moments, did you have to kind of go through a process of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, you know? And like, was it kind of that process during that time? You kind of like, you know what? Nah, I ain't. I'm about to fight this. You know, like, did you have to kind of draw that line in the sand?
Um, I think what works for me
Yeah.
is I just shut out all the white noise.
Mm,
I just go laser focus.
mm-hmm.
The bad things are happening. I sit down, I strategize, and I just block everything out
Mm.
because the race is only against myself.
Yeah. Come
You
on.
have to
Come on.
learn how to hear people.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what they are telling you has nothing to do with you.
Mm, mm,
Stick to the process. And when
mm.
you stick to the process, block out all the white noise. It's
Yeah.
just you running against yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's what has helped me, just taking out all
Message.
the noise, what people are telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that, and just saying, bet,
Yeah.
blocking all that out and just mapping out a plan
Mm-hmm.
and then executing the plan. And to do that, sometimes you do have to go in isolation. You
Yeah.
can't do the same things you were doing before.
Mm-hmm.
That has other consequences, but the
Mm-hmm.
thing is the mission.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you want to complete the mission, you will make some sacrifices.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's honestly part of the process, is part of the growth, is part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if you follow that uncomfortableness you're speaking about, it'll start to get comfortable.
Yeah.
You realize you're just stepping into who God designed you to be. But
Yeah.
it can feel uncomfortable because, yeah, shutting out all the white noise or changing
Mm-hmm.
habits, um,
Mm-hmm.
it can be painful for you and maybe some of the people that you're having to implement those things to.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if they love you, they're gonna be right there. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be fine.
Come on, come on, come on. Dr. Siobahn Grady, come on. Come on, come on. That's what I'm talking about. Finish what you start. As you mentioned early on that you are a strong advocate
Mhm.
for minorities and people of color to really get into learning STEM, or in this case, really enjoying, STEM, and really being a participant in STEM programs, right? So talk to us about your advocacy, what certain things you're doing, and really like, what has been the journey, being an advocate.
Oh, it's been amazing. Um, I had to really sit in the advocacy because I had been doing some of this work for a very long time. And you've known me a long time, John. You know, I've volunteered my time
Yeah.
so long over the years. But, I appreciate that people recognize that now. But I'm grateful to be in this space because, as I mentioned earlier, being in a male dominated field, even in my department at a HBCU, I'm the only Black full time faculty or tenure track faculty in the department. And sometimes people get these misconceptions when it's an HBCU mentioned. There are certain fields that there's just not a lot of women, and there's
Mhm,
definitely not a lot of women of color or a Black woman.
mhm,
So I think it's important that I use my role that I have to help other people see that they can be in the same position too. It means so much. At Winston-Salem State, Dr. Elva Jones, she showed me that. I
mhm,
don't know if you remember, but while I was there, I think my sophomore or junior year, this woman, Dr. Jones, she has a building in her name that was built from scratch.
mhm.
It's the computer science building in her name, and she's still living, and she is still the department chair and works in that building. If that's not a living legend, I don't know what is.
Mhm,
So she was a great role model and example to show what's possible as well. But some of the things that I do are speaking all across the world,
mhm,
sharing my journey because people want to know what is the sauce, or in my talks I like to call it what's the algorithm? What is
mhm.
that set of instructions that I use to solve this problem for me to
Yeah,
get into STEM? So I share how I got to where I am, how they can also get here, and how we
mhm,
need to help and empower each other because the numbers haven't changed. Even since I've been an assistant professor, they have not changed as far as getting more women and girls into the STEM areas. So I do a lot of speaking engagements. I volunteer my time. I teach coding classes. I spent many years being a core member of Black Girls Code for the Raleigh-Durham chapter. I've
mm,
led coding sessions with Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of America. I've done all of those things, and I still do those things. Actually, I have some of that coming up next month that I'm doing. But those are the type things that I do. And what's been especially special about this moment is being in a pandemic has broadened my reach. Before I
mm.
was just able to do that locally in my community, but now I'm able
Right.
to do that type of thing all over the world. And so
Mhm,
I'm truly grateful to be able to do those things. And then my ambassadorship that you kind of touched on earlier, the AAAS, that allowed me to be recognized by a national organization as a STEM role model,
mm.
which then allowed me to even broaden my reach even further because they gave me a statue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was in Texas?
It started off in Texas, and then
Okay.
this year it was unveiled during Women's History Month last month at the Smithsonian. And I actually gave a
Wow,
talk at the Smithsonian about my journey and about my research. So
wow.
those types of moments as well have helped to uh, help other people find out about my work and what I do,
Mhm.
provide more opportunities for me to continue to do this work as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I know, and again, we kinda mentioned this, that there's no, well, no, there's no such thing as a dumb questions.
No.
And I don't wanna make, assumptions about this, but from your, um, vantage point, why do we don't have minorities, women of color in computer science?
I don't have all the answers to those questions, but I
Mm,
do know I've heard people say to me, I'm just not good at math. I just can't. But when someone says that, I don't know, is that you're not good in math, or is it the way that it's being taught to you is not your learning style?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or has someone said something to you to make you not believe in your abilities within that area?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it can be a multitude of things,
Yeah.
as far as that goes. Yes, we all have a subject that comes natural to us.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, again, it could be the way that it's being taught to you. It could be you're
Mm-hmm.
not putting enough practice into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the things you don't get naturally, you just got to work a little harder at them.
Exactly.
It's not for you though.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what I was talking about earlier when you were asking me what I would tell the kids. Nothing's perfect. Figure out what it is you like or don't like about it, and just know that you're not going to figure it all out in one day. Sometimes some of this stuff takes a while to really get things going. But yeah, that's probably part of it. And then the other major part of it, which is why the AAAS Association selected 120 women to be STEM role models, is people don't see anyone that looks like them in these fields. So that's probably another reason. If you don't see anybody that looks like you, why would you want to step into that space?
Yeah.
You do need to see someone that looks like you, or know about someone that is a proven and known fact. And the research does show that when you have someone that looks like you, it does make a huge impact as far as your beliefs and abilities, because you're actually seeing someone that looks like you doing what you want to do. Just like Barack Obama, when he became president for the first time, there was hope that, wow, this actually really happened. So this is possible. But until that point, it was just a moment in maybe the Black community that it just seemed like it would never happen.
Yeah. Do you, because again, as I'm hearing you, I think the common theme is around exposure, right? Exposing our kids, exposing
exposure and representation, I would say.
Yeah, exposure and representation. So when you think about that, and I think about as far as my kids, because now that I have, been in corporate America for almost 20 years, pretty much everyone is in IT. Like everyone, like I'm a project manager.
Yeah.
And like, it's like everyone's IT. You're doing agile, you're doing different things as relates to these, I call them IT functions, so you may not be doing the programming and things like that, but definitely you may be doing something that is a extension of IT, right? And when you think about, like, far as kids, and especially like when I guess what I'm getting to around coding, and I try to make this connection with my daughter. I was like, and I want to hear from you, doctor, is it pretty much kids are already being exposed to coding, but they may not even know it? And what I mean by that is like the little things that she does on her computer, the programs that she work on, as you create, I don't know, slides, as you create videos, as you do all these things that you're telling the computer what to do, and even as my son, he's now into the Roblox. I don't know if I am pronouncing it right.
Yeah, I know about Roblox.
He's now into that, and he's doing different things. He loves like Legos. Like, is it certain things around the exposure piece that we may not just be recognizing as kids are doing this, but we have opportunity to really continue to cultivate it, and really make it, really call out these things that they're doing. Does that make?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely STEM is in everything. So like your son putting together the Legos, yeah, he might be an engineer. He's putting things together, building things. Yeah, he might be an engineer, but what type of engineer, that's yet to be determined.
Yeah.
Same thing with your daughter. Yeah, by her using technology, she's getting an exposure to computing. So yes, a lot of the things that young people are doing, they are, but there's a difference in actually honing in on a particular skill set.
Yeah.
But yes, STEM is in everything. So for instance, if your daughter wanted to learn to code, there's a free software. There's a program out there called Scratch. It was developed by MIT, and she could actually develop her own game. And it's fairly simple to use. There's all kinds of tools that are free and available these days
Mm-hmm.
now. And also programming. I don't know if you heard, but just during this pandemic, I believe the Girl Scouts just now developed like a cybersecurity badge. So a
Wow,
lot of these
that's good. Yeah,
community organizations and so forth, they are also recognizing the importance of STEM and building it into their initiatives. And
Mhm.
one thing I forgot to mention, and another way that I'm actually advocating for girls in STEM is I actually wrote a grant in 2020. And by the way, I'm an AKA. Let me just start with that. But I actually partnered with a chapter of Delta Sigma Theta in
Mm.
Pitt County, and I actually did STEM programming for their Delta Academy. Now, the program that I created is called STEM It Yourself. It's
Okay.
kind of a play on DIY, do it yourself. So I want
Ah.
people to know they can STEM it themselves. They can
Mhm.
actually build their very own STEM identity. And so
Mhm.
what I did there was I actually implemented STEM programming to those young ladies. It was about 5 girls in middle school for about 9 months. And I saw huge impacts and just them having representation and learning about the various STEM topics and actually doing activities. It really made a huge difference in their belief, not only in themselves, but just their abilities to be someone in STEM. Because before that, they didn't know anyone. And so
Mhm.
just those types of programs in the community, like the one that I did as a researcher at Central or any, and now the Deltas are probably empowered because part of the problem was they weren't STEM people. They were educators, but they didn't do STEM. So a lot
Mhm.
of times people don't know how to implement what's not their expertise.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think there's so many opportunities now for young people to get some type of exposure. And by the way, did I mention we have something called YouTube?
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
didn't have YouTube growing up. We had the Dewey Decimal System where you had to go read. And by the way, reading is still amazing.
Yeah,
Reading
yeah.
is amazing. But now young people have videos.
Mhm.
They can actually type in whatever topic they want. And that's another way to learn as well. And there are a lot of people who are doing free YouTube videos on data science and other topics as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to just kind of tap in and explore their own, own interest.
Yeah, yeah. YouTube University, as it
Mhm.
has been called, and we have used it. We have all used it in that matter. Um, Talk to us a little bit about, and you kind of mentioned. I'm kind of curious to know your research efforts,
Mhm.
different things, and maybe some publications that we can all go to and read more about it. Is it, do you research in a particular area? Of course, computer science, but is there anything that you kind of hone into
Mhm.
around your research?
Yeah, so my research is in artificial intelligence. I do work in
Yeah.
misinformation. So
Okay.
my doctorate research was looking at identifying fake news or misinformation within Twitter data. I
Oh.
have since then applied it to autonomous vehicle data or self-driving cars to be able to detect faults that are
Mhm.
happening in autonomous vehicles in real time.
Mhm.
And I also do work in, as we already mentioned, computer science education or STEM education, which is what that grant was based in. And all of my publications are on my website or either Google Scholar. But I
Okay.
also do work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I do that. I have a publication coming out next week within the online learning space.
Okay.
And I also have done that work as well in working with other organizations, helping them to see how they can increase their DEI efforts as well. So those are the areas that I do my research in, which is artificial intelligence, human computer interaction, and I do work in STEM education and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah. And so two questions. One, can you let us know your website?
Yeah, so it's my name, but it's has my maiden name there, but I will be updating that soon. But the website is SiobahncDay.com. And there you can find all my publications, contact information, and anything else that you want to
Mhm.
know.
So with the AI
Mhm.
research you have done, again, I think it's interesting finding faults because we think about like fake news, and especially everything that has been on Twitter and even there was a series or a documentary on Netflix. I don't remember the name, but it kind of talked
Yeah, I know
about.
the one you're talking about, Social Dilemma.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And it was something like Facebook and how, with the previous election and everything. When you think about AIs and you think about these bots, and that are used in so many different capacities, what is the future of it? Like where are we heading towards? And I know that's a loaded question,
It
Siobahn.
is.
I know. So I'm just from a perspective, like from
Yeah.
your perspective, where could we be
Like,
heading
from a
towards?
technological standpoint, I always tell people, they laugh, but I always say we're gonna be like the Jetsons.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where we're going. We're gonna be have a house in the sky. We're gonna be driving in the sky. I mean,
Hmm.
we're really, and they're already doing research on that now.
Yeah,
Flying taxis.
yeah.
A&T is actually doing research on that right now.
Wow.
But yeah, the future looks pretty bright. And
Hmm.
if you just think about, and I just take it back again to that dial up.
Hmm.
Think about where we are now. People have Wi-Fi in their car.
Yeah, yeah,
That is so cool to me.
yeah.
Even the cell phone, the first
Exactly.
cell phone was literally a cellular phone that you had to plug in into the lighter of the
Hmm.
car, and it was a big block to make phone calls. And now we have these thin devices that we can call people, and we don't even have to wait till 7 p.m. anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So if you're a young person, you don't know nothing I'm talking about. But we used to have to wait till 7 or either 9 p.m. to make phone calls so we wouldn't be charged.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
and think about that. That's how fast things have changed. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the problem that I see us having is the laws.
Mhm.
How are the laws going to keep up with technology?
Yeah.
Now that we have this facial recognition, now that we have all these biometric data, and
Hmm.
that's important because all of our biometric information is specific to us. What if
Yeah.
somebody gets their hands on that data? So I think for us, the future looks like worried about our privacy and our data
Hmm.
and what's being done with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
And I was gonna say, like with cybersecurity, I
yes.
know that's it's I know even at my job, IT, went to a recent type of IT summit, and I was just kind of in awe that cybersecurity is now its own industry.
Mhm.
Like it is truly have grown. And I know we know a couple of people that works in cybersecurity from Winston-Salem State
Yeah.
alone. So yeah, that's definitely really, really great information. And we'll kind of end on this note here. Um, and I think you have definitely provided so many wonderful gems to the family. But how would you define, or what does it mean to you to finish what you start? Another loaded question.
No, because I got a simple answer. It means no regrets.
Mm,
When you finish what you start, you won't have one single regret because you will know what it feels like to finish something.
mm,
When you don't finish,
yeah,
there's always that what if,
yeah,
and you don't want that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Family, that wraps up another edition of Happy Hood, the podcast. Finish what you start. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. And always remember, you are strong and you were created for greatness. And no matter what life brings you, always love God, love self, love your neighbor. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. Till next time, be blessed.
Finish what you start.
Message.